This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey everybody, welcome back to Only the Strong Survive, powered by Kahn Media. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and today we have got a great guest who I've been wanting to get on this show since episode 1, and that is Dave Cole, the mastermind behind Ultra 4 and King of the Hammers, one of the biggest off-road race in the world. Hands down, the toughest, most insane motorsport event I've ever been to. And Dave has proven over the last couple of decades to be not only a visionary, but somebody who is constantly evolving and changing his business and constantly having to fight to survive. So a great story to share with you guys today. Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much.
So, okay, before we get into, I want to tell your whole story and I want to go back to the beginning, but before we even get into that, to the handful of people out there who may not know what King of the Hammers is, give us the 2-minute elevator pitch. What's KOH?
KOH was a hodgepodge of, really was like a jamboree type of off-road event that was mixed with rock crawling and desert racing combined into a kind of like an endurance race of how we kind of recreate. At least that was the concept at the beginning, was just us, how we went around trails. But it's evolved, because it turns out if you give somebody a green flag and a checkered flag, they start pushing. But it's been an amazing evolution of it. And now, effectively, we've become the proving grounds for what the best off-road vehicle in the world is. And that's pretty crazy to watch. Both the builders at home, which we were founded on, was just the people at home building the stuff, to now there's OEMs and, full businesses out there that are trying to prove they have the best car. It's pretty cool.
And that's the story we'll get into today. Is I think I want to hear the story about a bunch of guys out in the desert just kind of screwing around and how it turned into this thing. But fast forward to today, how many people do you get out on the lake bed in Johnson Valley over the course of King of the Motos and King of the Hammers?
There'll be legitimate 80,000 people I'm comfortable with. It may be going past that now, but there's 80,000 people for sure.
And for people who haven't experienced it, it's 80,000 people, but you're not taking 80,000 people and putting them on a super speedway. I mean, that's the part to me that's so insane, is explain what you have to do on basically federal BLM land to have this race with that kind of number of people out there.
Sure. We're fortunate. And that was kind of the impetus to begin with, was to keep that land open and so we can recreate on it. And that's what we have. There's about 108,000 acres of public land in Johnson Valley, California. And, we lease it from the federal government for effectively the beginning of February, a couple weeks. And 80,000 people show up in campers and we build a town. It takes about 3 weeks to build the town. It takes about 3 days to take the whole thing down, and all the trash and everything, and put it all away and wait for the next circus.
And leave it just like the way you found it.
Mm-hmm. Better.
And what's incredible is, there's semi-truck size generators with power cables, as big as my leg. There's a whole food service, like I don't even know how to describe it, like a complex basically out there.
Our staff eats a semi of food every 2 days, just our staff.
Yeah, it's incredible. So you build a city in the desert, you get 80 plus, probably closer to 100,000 when you kind of fold everything in, people through the gates, watching all these different races. And like you said, what's sort of, I think, incredible is you now have Ford Motor Company. You've got, major UTV manufacturers. You've got, OEMs that are actually coming out there, and not even during the race, right? But even during the off season, you've got OEMs coming to you saying, hey, can you help us? Whether it's R&D, race vehicles, even promo and filming. I mean, you've kind of turned Johnson Valley into sort of the epicenter of off-roading in the world, certainly in the American market.
And I'll be clear, Baja 1000 still the daddy. That's the race. That's what kind of I know where it's at. Nor 1000 first one. I'm not I didn't invent this stuff, but certainly being able to bring it into Southern California, and some of the decisions we made and how we try to make the festival out of it have made a difference. And it's a pretty cool place. It certainly beats working for a living. So, but
well, let's go back to the beginning, Dave. What did life look like for you kind of in high school, right out of high school? Were you always a car guy? Were you an off-road guy? Did you pursue motorsports as a passion? Did you have a more traditional career path? What was life like back at the beginning?
Kind of all those things, and then nothing traditional at all. I grew up in South Jersey. I grew up on the East Coast, all over the East Coast. But South Jersey was kind of home. Like we ended up coming. That's where my grandparents were all at. So we kind of ended up back there, whether it was layoffs or divorces or whatever was happening in the life of the elder people. But we ended up back there, and I went to college for a year and a half, 2 years, and I got a job at GE Capital. It just transferred from Travelers Mortgage to GE Capital Mortgage, and I got a job as a file boy, and that started out. And then I got into technology. That was like right at the crux of computers coming into 1992. I'm old. I just got in the tech wave of computers, and I ended up finding a pretty cool niche in the operations management, business development kind of stuff. I was pretty good at going in and looking at broken things and fixing them, whether it be like operationally. And that's where I did for like 20 years. And I did that's how I ended up in California in 99. As far as being drawn to off-road, man, I don't know why it was, but even in South Jersey, I had to find dirt. I took my mom's Ford Escort out in the dirt in the Pine Barrens. I just wanted to be in dirt. And I ended up, I bought my second car. My second car was an 89 Eddie Bauer Bronco. And I wanted that because I wanted to drive on the beach. There's Island Beach State Park was in Jersey. And you could drive on the beach there. It was the only place you could do that. But you had to be fishing and to get a fishing permit. So I had a fisherman permit. I can't even say the words. I had that. I didn't have I had the rods. I had the cool things on the front bumper to put the rods in, and my cooler, and I had the 2 dogs necessary. I had no hooks. I had no intention on catching fish. I just had the intention of putting the weight in the water. I didn't want to catch anything at all.
They were props.
Yeah, they were a reason to, we're not catching anything. We got to move again. Then we moved down the beach another 2 miles and hang out. And that's how I got to go off-roading. And when I ended up in California, then it was at the next, the rock crawling was just starting. I mean, just professionally starting then. And I didn't even realize it. I thought it was something that happened every day. And I fell in love with that and rock crawling. And rocks.
So you land there professionally, you find this new community, you start wheeling. I mean, this is what, like early 90s?
This is
mid 90s.
This is 99 when I moved to California, and by 2001, I got married at the top of Jackhammer.
Nice, and that's when the internet thing was really taking off. That was the first .com bubble, right? Like,
yeah, that was pretty crazy. That was a weird time. Again, you don't realize what you're doing. I mean, that file boy story. I was a Kelly temp for the first mortgage-backed security.
Wow.
So you talk about ruining the tech bubble. It was actually the housing bubble, and that was the mortgage-backed security, and that's how GE made, and that's where I made my bones. All of a sudden they went through, with this stuff actually matters. We're going to track this stuff. What are we going to do? And that's where I stepped in.
And when did you first hook up with the group that eventually kind of created KOH? How did that happen?
I am yeah.
You're it. You're the guy.
So here's the entire story in a nutshell.
Tell me the story. Yeah.
I was a tech guy. I was on the internet on Pirate 4x4, and a guy named Jeff Knoll, who was my partner when we started this whole thing. He came to me and wanted me to basically make Strava. He had the idea for Strava in 2005. Okay. And unfortunately, he had the idea, but not good enough friends. So I couldn't write it for him. I basically opted out when I got to the conclusion that the GPSs of that time and still now are just make a a data file that anybody can just change. So you would have to have the cooperation of the GPS companies to give you a proprietary file, or, now phones that have GPSs, which we didn't have in 2005. So I told him I couldn't do it. And he's like, all right, well, I'm like, why don't we just go racing? Why don't we just make a race and do the race? And he's like, well, we can't get permits. But I had been pulling permits for our club, the Tin Benders. I'm a tin bender. That's our club in Johnson Valley. And I got permits. So I said, let's just do it. And a year later, we just did it.
And how close was that first race to what we have today? Was it pretty similar?
It was the same concept. It was much smaller. There was 12 guys. I invited everybody I knew that would come race, and 12 people showed up, which kind of gives me an indication. We didn't, there was no public, it was all like underground, because we didn't, for the OG 13 race, we didn't have a permit, but it was just 12 guys racing in the desert on a Tuesday. And that's all you need you don't need a permit if you don't selling anything. And
right. You're just recreating, right?
Recreating. And so
what were the rigs? Were these just like modified street trucks?
No, a couple of like John Reynolds Bronco, which is now in the Petersons right now, sitting in the Petersons. It was the first, like back then, just being fuel injected in an off-road car was a really big deal. Think about it. This is 2001, ostensibly, these cars are being built, right? So the early 90s is when fuel injection became everywhere. Yeah. It wasn't like it was, and we were all driving junkers. We were mostly Jeeps, right? So it's a carbureted Jeep, and that's what you run, or a carbureted Toyota till 86. And that's what we were in. And then all of a sudden, like, there became enough fuel injection stuff that was like, okay, I can do fuel injection. Oh, it doesn't.
No, I remember Jeff Smith was writing tech articles in Hot Rod and Four Wheeler back then about adapting GM TPI to street vehicle applications. Mm-hmm. And that was crazy back then. People were like, that's like spaceship technology. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so much so it's like, well, I'm going to take all that crap off and go back to my carburetor.
Right, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Cheers. But yeah, I on that exact note, in this same time frame we're talking about, was right about the time they made Suzuki Samurais illegal to be on the road. And they got rid of the Honda Odysseys, and they got rid of pretty much everything. The Yamaha Rhino was sued into oblivion.
We had an Odyssey. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, if you're too young, not the Odyssey minivan. This was like a early like UTV.
Think of the little Predator golf cart, go-karts you can get out in front of a Tractor Supply right now.
Right.
That's what they were back then. They were just these little...
And just like those, you could roll them pretty easy, which was part of the fun, but also maybe part of the liability.
They were slightly more safe than a three-wheeler. That was the appeal for Honda Odyssey. Was like, oh my God. You don't want to die?
I knew so many guys that broke collarbones on three-wheelers, like so many. That was like a pretty common thing back then at Glamis and stuff like that.
Yep. So, anyway, then we're at. I said, let's just try a race, and there was a couple of things that were motivating. That were, hunger was good. I was fairly pretty broke at that point. I had stopped working corporate world stuff. I went to Mexico City. I met a wonderful lady who's still our CFO and part of like family. And we where was I going with that? The motivation, the hammers. In 2005, the Marines announced they were going to take Johnson Valley. It was kind of like the announcement we just got. They announced they were going to close the airspace. And when you push back enough and you ask the right questions, you find out that the reason why it was being done was because there was no user days. There was no recreation happening, and recreation wasn't a metric that mattered. On the spreadsheet of us transitioning this land from one thing to another, public recreation simply is still not on that ledger sheet, if that makes sense. So we kind of had to make it on the ledger sheet, and we did that just by user days. And so between 2005 and 2009, I tried to build an event that would get 100,000 user days, which is what they said we needed to kind of like a threshold of being significant.
Interesting. I did not know that.
And yeah, that's why King of the Hammers, that I believe, I mean, that's why I worked so hard for it. And I'm positive that's why everybody was so gravitated to it, because we were fighting. I mean, we were not only fighting against each other on the track, but we were all fighting together. That's like the place we'd all basically get to back in the desert and go, okay, you're not taking the land.
So if you got enough bodies out there on the desert floor enough days, you could then make the case to the government like, hey, we're really using this thing, so please don't take it away.
Yeah, it wasn't that straightforward. They told us the reason why they were taking it was because there was no user days. They didn't say that if we got user days, they wouldn't take it. They just said, one of the reasons why we're taking this land is because there's no user days. Okay, well, I'm going to limit it.
Tell me, for those who have never been, who don't understand, and I'm fortunate that you popped my cherry the first time we got together in person. I think you might have been. I'll tell you.
We can take parts out of this thing, and you'll do do that. This is probably one of them.
I think you were testing me a little bit, right? Like, hey, hop on this rig. Let's go for a ride. And then scared the crap out of me, but it was fun. Yeah. What is it, for those who've never been, what is it that's so unique about Johnson Valley? Why is it so special?
It's vast. It's when you drive to Vegas on the 15 down an 8-lane highway, right? And you can still feel really small, like really small. Especially if you're not sitting in traffic and you just look around and go, wow, we are insignificant, right? And and that's the same thing. The reason why anybody wants to go anyplace out away from things is to feel that vastness and that openness. It's so big that when you drive from one side of it to the other, it changes. It's different earth from one place to the other. And we don't get to do that very often left on this planet, where you can drive someplace for 30 miles and not be driving over a prepared surface and something that's already been manicured or inside of between two rails. In fact, when was the last time you got lost? Even when you didn't want to be.
Right.
And you can certainly get lost. I still get lost out there, especially with no moon. No moon, drive out there with no shadows. Tell me, go ahead, take your phone. You'll still get lost. And yeah.
Well, and it's also the terrain is pretty varied, right? I mean,
yes, yeah. The terrain is magnificently. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's absolutely rugged. It's the Mojave Desert, so rocks and dry riverbeds and dry lake beds and dunes and everything, and it's all in one spot.
Well, I think for people who have not spent a lot of time in SoCal, the thing I think that surprises people is, your compound is what, 2 hours from LAX, maybe 3 hours at the most.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think most people associate the sort of continuous ribbon of concrete and glass from basically like Santa Barbara to the border, right? It's all one big kind of unicity.
Yeah.
But you're not that far from that. And it feels like you're on a different planet out there. So it's pretty special.
And the best part about it is it's just a gateway to it. Go further into the desert, and it gets even more and more beautiful, unique, and amazing, and wonderful. And so that's the cool part. That's the best part about being able to go off road, is around the next corner is something that is new, something that is different and hasn't been seen before and isn't curated for you and everything else. It's just nature. Take care of it, and it's beautiful.
So I think you bring up an interesting point. I'd like to get your perspective on this. This isn't even on my list of questions, but there's this dichotomy that I've run into where, and I see it in off-road and rock crawling. I see it through our other business on the hunting and fishing side of things, where I think, and tell me if you agree or disagree, but in my experience, the people that are kind of noisy, that are sort of you shouldn't be doing that, they typically live in cities, and they typically don't participate in the actual, like, whether they're anti-hunt, anti-fish, anti-off-roading, anti-rock crawling, but these are the people that often don't actually go to these places. And what they don't realize is some of the best advocates for the desert is the off-roading community. And I've met people through you that are, between Blue Ribbon and some of these different organizations that are super active about protecting these open spaces. Same thing with hunting. People are like, oh, hunting is bad. We want to protect the environment. Hunters spend more time and money protecting our forests than anyone I've ever met who lives in a city. So it's an interesting dichotomy. How have you had to sort of navigate the politics of land use and all that? And is that something you saw coming, or was that sort of a surprise? Like, tell me about that part of your gig.
No, I didn't. I mean, it wasn't a surprise at all because I went to Sierra Club meetings in 2000, long before King of the Hammers was even a thought. It was purely just, why are we closing land and why are you so mad about it? And then we went and sat down and talked, and it's like every place. I lived in Lake Arrowhead at that point, right? And then I went to the Sierra Club meeting in Lake Arrowhead, and it was like we want to close down this, and this. Okay, but don't you like going to them? Oh yeah. Well, how are you going to get to them if you close everything to get? How are you ever going to enjoy it again if you can't see it? Oh, we just need to make people stop going to it now so it'll be beautiful for others. But they can't go to it anymore. You can't go to it. If you can't go to it, then what are we doing? What are we preserving? And why can't we do both? Why can't we enjoy it and by being there also preserve it? And that's, I don't know. I found that if the more you actually, you got to talk to people. You have to, because to your point, the people making noise, sometimes to your exact point, it's just noise. And it's someone that's got an agenda that isn't really anything to do with what you're doing. You're just part of the crossfire. But other times it's someone that actually has a point. And if you listen and converse and communicate, then you come up with a solution that maybe benefits everybody, as opposed to just sitting from afar and closing everything down.
Well, in my experience, you're really good at that. The first time you and I met and started working together was back in 2021. Uh-huh. And the world was pretty weird in January, February of 2021.
Yes. If you're going to do this event, Dave, you're going to need to hire significant PR people. And you're going to create a mess, and we're not prepared for that, and you need to hire pros. And that's not a knock. I had pros, but literally it was, you need disaster recovery people for doing this event in COVID. And that's how we met. Yes, sir.
And I think, I might be wrong, I'm pretty sure KOH was the first large-scale event held in California.
It was
in COVID.
It was the largest event in California for almost a year. On both sides, like a year and a half, because we snuck in just under like the beginning of it.
Right.
And then by the time the next year happened, we were in the middle of it, and we were in a pickle. Everybody was in a pickle, right? Because they pushed everybody outside and then said, but you can't go to there then. It's like, okay. I remember it's like, okay, don't give me a permit, but there's going to be 100,000 people here this year, and it's going to be all year mess. And Tony, it's a pain to clean up. You're going to really want some help cleaning it up. And that's how.
What shocked me about that whole thing was at the same time that the news was showing like LA County sheriffs, who, by the way, I like and respect, right? No knock on them. They're just doing their job. But they're like being asked to go like yell at surfers during the lockdown because some dude is alone on a surfboard out on the ocean, and it's all over the news. And yet we're having these conversations to have 100,000 people on the lake bed. And to be honest, and I have my thoughts on the current governor of California, but I got to say, they were super cool.
Yeah, like they proved it. It goes back to practicality. You can, if you sit and just trade text messages or emails or just statements, right? Then you don't get anywhere. But have a real conversation. Let's get practical about this. If you cancel and listen, if this doesn't happen, this is going to happen. And then when that happens, what are we going to do? Oh, this is bad. Okay, let's figure this out then.
Yeah. And I remember on some of those calls, they gave us the list. Like, okay, here are the things you have to do. Here's the protocols, X, Y, and Z. We said, okay. They said, okay. Everybody was cool.
It didn't
work out.
It worked out.
Yeah, that was wild. That was such an interesting time. So
now, Dan, this is something you don't know. You can try this on. Try doing that without a credit card.
oh my gosh, really?
I still don't, we have an American Express, man. Like right now, we are just now becoming a real business that people don't go, oh, you're either some conflation of circus carny and like certain death, right? And clubbing baby seals all at the same time. And it's like, okay, and now we're bigger than that and it's growing and it's changing. It's pretty amazing.
Well, that's actually you lead into the next question I wanted to ask, which was one of the things we talk about, because normally on this show, we talk to business founders and business owners, and what you do is a business, but it's also this whole other thing, right? Because it's entertainment, it's motorsports, it's a public event. It's a very complex thing. And we talk a lot about scale, but a traditional business, the input and the output scale generally in a pretty reliable way. But you've got all these X factors. You've got regulators, you've got weather, you've got like all the sponsors, cash flow, all your cash flow comes in 1 week a year essentially. And so I'm curious from both the event promoter side, but also the competitor side. How do you scale this thing? Because you've got to keep the fans coming back every year, and you've got to make sure you've got racers who are engaged. And I mean, it's no small feat to be, a competitor at KOH. It's expensive and hard. And so you've got these kind of like many audiences you have to serve. How do you do that, grow it, and keep your constituents all happy?
Sometimes really poorly. Especially if you read Facebook,
but we'll get into that. But okay.
But like it's certainly not just me at this point. I mean, seriously, at this point, I have nothing to do with Ultra Sport Series anymore. That is, there's a commissioner, John Goodby, and there's an operation manager, Jeremy Dickinson, and there's a full staff that are running that series now, and it's being financed and run and basically, paid for by the racers themselves. So that's where it's evolved to. So it's not like, it really was just a few people back in the day. But there was a really passionate group of people, and that most of those people are still involved. I mean, Roxy's still the only one that sells T-shirts, and Wuhan's still the only one that can figure out a way to make that the books balance, and everybody's got their parts, right? But I don't know how we did it. It's been magic. And if I knew how we did it, I would go do it again. But I've been fortunate with this one piece of magic here that people are just passionate about, man. I don't know how I'm sorry. Well, really threw me on that one.
No, it's okay. And I sometimes you just, I think, at least in my, not to answer for you, but in my interactions with you over the years, most racers and car guys I know are sort of an engineer at heart, and they're really good at just seeing something that's broken, figuring out how to fix it. And my experience with you has been, if you see something that's not working, you just keep trying stuff until you find something that works. Yeah. And I think that's racing, right? I mean, that's...
I have a few things that are probably broken in my brain, but one of them is I don't ever remotely think about the mistakes yesterday. It's just keep go forward. But I also, the win there, and it's kind of why I probably can't tell you why the magic exists or anything, is I also don't celebrate the wins either. Because if you go up with the wins, then you're going to have to crash that hard with the losses. If you find some way to not go too high with the wins, then you won't crash as low with the losses, and you'll stay in the middle. And as crazy as that sounds, especially from someone like me I'm pretty mercurial. I will certainly speak my mind and make waves when I need to or when I want to. But if you keep that middle part, you can just keep going the next day, no matter what. Just keep going.
Well, you made a comment earlier. I wanted to kind of circle back to it about Facebook. And you look at someone like Roger Goodell, right? I don't see a lot of people after a great season of football saying, "Hey, Roger, great job. You rock." Right. Mm-hmm. But if there's some rule change, every dude on Barstool is crapping on Roger Goodell, and Portnoy gets ejected from the NFL games, and or even like closer to our deal, like you look at someone like Penske comes in, buys IndyCar. Again, if there's a great race, no one is slapping him on the back saying, "Hey, Roger, nice job." But if there's something they don't like about an IndyCar race, they're crapping all over this guy on every social media platform they can find. There is a component of this gig where I think whoever the person is at the top gets minimal praise and a lot of heat when people don't like things. You have been certainly in the crosshairs a couple of times. And I think that you're genuinely, and I mean, I can say this firsthand, having worked with you now for a while. I don't know anybody who cares more than you do about this thing. And I do think that some people, I don't know, maybe it's an easy target deal. I'm not sure what it is. But how do you handle that? Like, how do you wake up every day knowing that no matter what you do, it's going to be picked apart online, and there's always some armchair quarterback who's going to have a bunch of crap to talk on social media about you?
It kind of comes back to that last thing too. Is if you're not listening to the attaboys, you're not listening to the you sucks, right? I have my own confidence in myself about where we're going based upon I think we're going the right direction, and I know we have a great team. So it's one of the things that in this world, like today, in all the craziness that happened in this world, the thing that I don't understand is when you see what's supposed to be the stability parts of our life, like, I don't know, the stock market or stuff like that changes based on a Twitter post or one thing happening in 2 seconds and it's making $1 billion change in things, then none of that's real. And you're chasing a shadow and Facebook is nothing but emotional stock, right? I emotionally feel better today, or I emotionally feel down today. What was my day? Did I give Facebook the power to drive my happiness? Then I had a great day because everybody liked my post. I had a bad day. I didn't get my way, or I lost an argument. That's lame. You have to get up tomorrow and still do the things you were doing. And sorry.
No, that's a great analysis. I appreciate it.
I don't know, I kind of made that one up, but yeah, emotional stock. It does kind of make sense. Because people do that with their stock. They do what they're banking. I'm going to go golfing today. It was a great day. Okay.
No, you're right. Well, I appreciate the perspective on it. So I guess, Dave, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is that you have, what's interesting about KOH is I think a lot of, especially motorsports events, really any events, once, the founder or the group that puts it on sort of finds a winning formula, they just sort of rinse and repeat. That does not appear to be the case with Hammers, where, I mean, from the tech stack, the archive of content, the way that the live stream operates. Can you just talk about just like the people who can experience it at home, content resources for the industry and sponsors? Explain what you're building there, because it's pretty fascinating. And I don't know that even enthusiasts who follow the race necessarily know what goes into the tech side of producing KOH.
Man, we've been doing, so we came along at an interesting time. We couldn't afford television time. Back when we started, television time was real. Like, you paid $100,000 to put an hour of television on. It was a real number to pay. As you know more about it than I did, because I couldn't even afford to be in those rooms, let alone pay for the television time. And then the concept of live streaming didn't exist. And there was just we just found the spot kind of making our own live show and putting the data out that way. But that's painted us into a corner. And now all of a sudden our only distribution point has been that social media, been YouTube or been Facebook. And that's the only out the distribution point for it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And the upside about, it's not an upside. There's not a lot of other content out there, but we're going to take what we have and we're going to put it all together into one place and move. I think that we have to organize as an industry together. I believe that the industry members have to work together. The teams need to work together. We need to find a way to elevate ourselves internally, because There isn't going to be a magic solution come along and anybody doing it for us, and it doesn't exist someplace else. And one of my when I try to look at, like, I don't look at things normally like people look at like a balance sheet ever and try to figure out, like, well, we have the money to do this or not. It's more of do you have enough money to make up for the mistakes of not doing it? Do you make up for the error or the hole that's going to be left or the crater that's going to be left by not doing this? Do you have that much money? And that's the way I try to look at I can't push rope uphill and continue to chase vendors. I can't continue to chase sponsorship because it's a never ending kind of like chase kind of thing, but the value's there that you provide for those vendors if they come out. So if you stop chasing like the really big fish and just become a service provider that way, that's kind of what we went to a long time ago. I stopped trying to chase the single title sponsor, which seemed to be everybody would go after. Then you're building your event around what they need, and that changes every 3 years when their marketing budget changes. But if you build the event to what you need and they find value in what you're doing, you just keep plugging along with your formula. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then that has led us to a point now that the bulk of our industry, so the auto industry, is certainly the epicenter of the business is SEMA. I mean, that it is the trade organization. It is a very strong one. It is almost a pattern for other trade organizations to build after. And the vendors that participate in the off-road industry, for the most part, are just like me. We're still on the fringe. We're not. I'm a SEMA member. I have been, but I'm not. I haven't been like. I'm not active in the middle of it. I'm not. I don't. I'm a fringe player. I'm sitting on the outside too. And most of the companies don't even engage that way. And now they have an opportunity to do that. And I believe that our path forward is going to be to organize under a group, SEMA, ORBA, that type of thing, and somewhere in there, a group that has national relevance, and provide services as an industry, as an off-road promotion industry, right? We need to do a lot of things differently. We are a hobby. There is no credentialing. There is no driver's license. There's no media license. There's no there's no education for the marshals, right? We are literally hobbyists. And if we want to be in a place that has value and can provide value, and that an industry can market off of, because they can count on us being relevant tomorrow, not doing the bad things, being a real industry. All that comes along from we have to step up at a lot of things. Sorry, my mind's going to your point. There's 20 different lanes. There is
just being organized. And I mean, one of the things I guess I wanted to, because you're making an interesting point, and I think the off-road community in general, and certainly off-road racers, are, in my experience, they are sort of rebellious by nature, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're taking a group of people who kind of at their core are all sort of rebellious, and you're saying, hey guys, herd, but also we need to be a team, and we need to work together, and we need to work with these politicians and rule makers, and that's a hard sell.
It is, but if you can show them the value. So, I mean, for us, the value is that content. So to spoiler alert, and this kind of will wrap it all the way around possibly, or maybe make it worse. Formula One. Okay.
Yep.
Do you know, I mean, we have 10 minutes, right? I can tell you this. We can.
Yeah.
Okay.
As much time as you want.
All right. So do you know how Formula One really started? Do you know how Bernie Ecclestone started Formula One?
I don't.
Okay. Watch the movie One. It's a documentary. Okay. And you'll see that Bernie comes along because he is an independent car builder in a sport that is funded by 4 events, because there's only 4 events: Monaco, Monte Carlo, Spa, and Nürburgring, maybe. I'm not even sure. But there was halo events, there's the Baja 1000 and King of the Hammers in the Mint, right?
Right.
And they were all independent contractors, all working independently, attracting those teams to bring their cars to race at their Grand Prix. The other races were just support races. They never got coverage. They had no safety. They had no medical. They had nothing whatsoever. Bernie came and organized the 90 independent racers as opposed to the 20 factory racers. Now he had the majority of people, and he went to the other tracks and got the television rights for them for future races. And he agreed with the independent racers that at least the independent racers will show up to your races and we're going to be on television. And he purchased those television rights for $1 million. And he went back to those 10 those 10 OEM teams and offered them 10% of Formula One for $100,000 just to pay for the $1 million cost up front. And they would own 10%. And they all told him they were going to invest in their cars. They were race car teams. That's all like Ferrari and all the other ones. They all said, no, we don't want to be involved in this content thing.
Wow.
So he kept the content rights, and that created the Concord Agreement, which was an MOU that just said simply, we agree as a group to do something tomorrow. That doesn't exist in our sport. It simply doesn't exist. I mean, let's be real. Like, there is no contract that says I have to have King of the Hammers next year. There isn't even a contract that says they have to let me or that any of the races are going to come back. And Roger doesn't have it with Baja, and Matt doesn't have it for the Mint. We are all living hand to mouth. We don't have there isn't a drivers union. There isn't a union of marshals. None of that stuff exists. So there's no organization to even plan around, or even to say, there isn't even a group to say we agree to come. But now there is. And we can be that. All we have to do is just agree to be that. And that's what we're doing.
And you've already had some of those meetings.
Oh, yeah. The Ultra 4, again, back to it. Ultra 4 is funded by the racers. There's 17 charter members, and all they're doing is just paying their entry fees at the beginning of the year. That's all they're doing. They're not doing anything different than that. They're not paying more money. They're not taking on more risk. They're simply agreeing to pay their entry fees in advance. And by paying their entry fees in advance, then John and Jeremy can go do work. And they can plan on the work for the year and not go, man, I hope I have enough gas to get home from Indiana, which is where we live for quite a while and where we all live. Really, I mean, it's some level that's about where it's all at, and we need to be different than that. And
so explain. So now that you've kind of got that laid out, explain what you're trying to do with USAC, because it's pretty interesting, and I don't think a lot of people know.
So I've been with USAC from the very beginning, and you go back to what drove me. I went to Indy. My dad was a yellow hat Indy guy in the mid '80s.
And explain what USAC is for our listeners.
United States Auto Club. The United States Auto Club. This is another history lesson. There's race. There's sanctioning. There's the people that insure you as your sanctioning body. There's 6 sanctioning bodies in the United States: USAC, NASCAR, IMSA, SCCA, NHRA, and CART. Those are the only 6 official sanctioning bodies. They're sanctioning bodies because they come under the auspices of a group called ACUS, which is really a big part of FIA. So in the end, all those groups are sub sanctions of FIA, which is in France.
And that's regulating safety, rule book, the whole deal.
Yes. And in my mind, and this is the ironic twist of, you make assumptions, right? I assumed those business offices were also the business offices for those racers. That if I was Jeff Gordon, I got paid by NASCAR because DuPont came to NASCAR and said, I want to be here. NASCAR cashed a check and gave Jeff Gordon some of his money. And then they put some of it in commercials and they did the things. I assumed that seemed like that'd be a pretty cool business model. So that's what I kept thinking, we needed to get to that table, but there wasn't a table. There wasn't really a table for us to go have a seat at. So to me, to making that you make the risk table or the racing table is USAC. And I outsourced everything that is racing inside of what Hammerking was. I don't manage the race. I help set the race course only at King of the Hammers. John sets the race courses with the other races, but USAC signs off on them. And USAC provides the racing director that's following the rules that now is the USAC rule book that can be now taught to marshals, which is a whole other tangent that we're working on now, is teaching marshals things and teaching media things and then teaching drivers things, all from the same rule book. Sorry, I did it again. I go, and then
No, so you've got USAC providing marshals and oversight.
yes, we moved our, so the USAC didn't know what that was from an off-road perspective. They knew from on-road. They do round stuff.
Right.
So we basically wrote the rule book internally, right? We learned our mistakes. We learned how to be better. We've done that as a group, as an industry. Presented that rule book, and then had USAC rewrite it in a way that doesn't get me sued in federal court, which happened already, and I lost that one. It turns out I'm not a very good rule book writer either, but I mean, you can now USAC has more institutionalized it now, and it gives us something more concrete to aim for. And then the other part that USAC is doing is, while sanctioning Ultra 4, they've also been the home of the short course racing and rally. So what USAC is doing now is creating a new off-road sanction. It's called Focus, Federation of Off-Road Competition, United States. And it's where the book of business, the sanctioning of off-road racing will happen in our country at a national level. And that will be American Rally Association and CORE, the Crandon guys up in the Midwest, short course guys, and the West Coast now, and Ultra 4, and then we're working with. I'm working with my peers in Southern California and in Nevada and other people who do races and stuff, and coming up with the best, like a centralized group to provide that service, to provide the service of making the race happen.
So, and it sounds like the benefit here, if somebody's sitting here listening to all this and they're going, okay, like this is all very technical, what's the benefit? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the benefit is, if you're a racer, if you only have one rule book to worry about and you can double or triple or quadruple the number of races you can compete in, building a rig to a specific class in a specific rule book, that's more opportunity and it's lower cost, right? You can go to more races. You don't have to build multiple
I think it's one of the inherent problems with off-road racing in general is it's not a sport that you could trot out 30 times a year or even 20 times a year. I think that even if you got to like the F1 equivalent of off-road, you're still only racing 8 or 10 times a year. It's a lot. The rule book not only lets you be flexible to where you can go, it also lets new promoters come in. Turns out if King of the Hammers is the big event, and I wouldn't even know how to get a billboard ordered. And this is probably like the longest podcast type of thing I've ever done. And so that makes me a pretty bad promoter that way. There should be good promoters out there. And there should be a pathway that they can come in and go, yeah, I was going to do boxing, or I was going to do fairs or concerts, but I'm going to make this festival happen, and I can do it. And they can actually make bigger events. And when bigger events happen, then we will have mainstream success, and we will continue to grow.
And that's your goal. So you want to kind of replicate what you've done with hammers in other markets.
I want someone else to build it. I don't want to build it. I can't build it. I'm an old guy that's going to go back to California sometime, not Kentucky.
Okay.
And I don't want to travel like that. And I don't think I'm the right person for it. I think we need to create an environment that allows better people to come in and raise our entire bar, and I'm not just trying to make a bigger pasture for me to go play. And I think we need to, if the industry is coming in the front door at some place like SEMA or Orba, right? And they're choosing to partake in the industry and fund it that way by being involved in both the support, organizational, operational rules, technology, content, all those things at a holistic level. The individual promoter isn't carrying that weight to try to make the first green flag happen. Does that make sense?
Yep.
We can, racing is going to happen because professional racing people are going to handle professional racing. The spot where someone's going to build the next King of the Hammers or Mint 400. Maybe, I personally believe, as much as everybody thinks we're not the best of friends, but that we hate each other, is I think this makes Matt Martelli infinitely more valuable. I think that, and I probably should delete this part of the show because I'm pissing somebody off, but the reality is I'm watching all my peers and what we struggle at, and this is going to allow them to be better at what they do without getting crushed at doing things we can't do, like make content and not get value out of it.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think, I remember as a kid growing up, you would watch something like I remember being with my dad and the Indy 500 weekend. Like we never had the money or the means to go to Indy, so we would watch it on TV, right? But there was still a big deal. Like we always knew, okay, like,
yep,
it's Indy 500 weekend. We're sitting on the couch. We're going to watch, and you watch, and then it's over, and everyone moves on with their life. And so it's just a kind of even with TV, right? It's this one fleeting moment, and there's ratings, and it's done. Obviously, our whole world has changed, and now we live in this ecosystem where everything is played out in little chunks and clips, and social media snippets and vertical format video. And I think something that people don't necessarily think about is live streaming any event, whether it's a race at a super speedway or Coachella or whatever, is very different at a facility with infrastructure than what you're doing in the middle of the desert where there isn't even cell service. So you guys are out there with these containers, like shipping containers converted into production studios full of people live streaming, but it's so much more than just the live streaming.
We've actually moved past that now too. Those people are in the studio now too.
So explain what you're doing with the content, because I think it's really interesting and where you're trying to go with it.
I think the first part to go there is content's nothing but optical data. It's just data, right? And to me, there's layers of data that come out of a race. In fact, a race is nothing but a data factory, right? It's the performance of the cars, performance of the athletes, performance relative to themselves, relative to history, all the things. You just have data, right? The content is an optical viewing of it, but it's not the whole story. And it also, to me, the thing that, going back to GE days and database days, I was a relational database guy. The more pieces of data that you can correlate to one piece of data, the exponentially more. And if you can do that across a bigger subset, then you have like mass knowledge, right? So instead of us trying to create a normal show right now, first you have to be able to bring it all in, figure out a story, and then tell your story back out, right? What's the problem with that? You're left with the one output. And now you can be tricky and have all your raw streams, and they could watch that as like a multi-view and listen to your audio as your main.
And you're covering a course that's so big you can't even capture it all.
We're doing the NORA 1000. We expect to have 200 cameras.
Wow.
Okay, so there's 200 optical inputs coming in. How do you tell a story from that? You can't possibly, and you certainly, even if you could tell the best story possible. You can't tell all of the stories in a one-lane output.
Right.
Okay. So if you store all the data and you keep all that data at a level that is related on time and location, whether it's telemetry, biometrics, optical sensor, audio sensors, timing, so just the existence of that car at given points, so you know their performance, all of those combined, and if you store that data and then able to watch that data back through any filter, just like looking at any other database, right? Then your story, like think of it now as your story, like if you're covering a race, generally your camera choice is who's the leader. Your next camera choice is show me somebody who's doing something cool. And your third choice is tell me something, not show me something that I have to talk about because I have to talk about it.
Right, a crash or something like that.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
So that again gets back just to that one thing. While those things were happening, another 200 things were happening out there, and some of them we may never know about. We don't know about the coolest things that happen in off-road. by not even a stretch. You don't even remotely know about the coolest things. And they're gone. They're just, right? But if we can capture them, even if they don't get our attention live, and we can capture them and catalog them in time and location, then you can go back and watch that race again from any perspective you want, whenever you want it. And back to content, where I'm at, the thing that I think the strongest thing that we're doing now is you don't even need the optical sensor. If you take the telemetry off the car, if you scan the land and you scan the car, you can recreate that car in that simulator. And you can use that output from that simulator as now an optical sensor. Except you've just now videoed off-road racing in CGI, and you created the graphics based off of the data of the car. We're doing that. That's real.
So you're capturing telemetry data, vehicle speed, approach angle, all that stuff.
You will get that as data, but you don't need approach angle. If you scan the planet or a segment of the planet, right? And you scan a car and they're both real. They're both engineered correctly, right? Mm-hmm. Then if you take this car, if you take this model of this car and you tell a simulator it was here and the 10th of a second later it was here and the 10th of a second later it was here, it can figure out how it did that, right? You don't have to retell it anything because it knows to get to the left at this degrees in the 10th of a second, I must have turned the wheels.
So I know you've been capturing all this data for a while. Mm-hmm. And I know we've already got a system where like a sponsor could go in and say, hey, this one rig at this one section of the race had this one thing happen. And we already have the ability to search footage, pull content, pull all that. What's the long-term goal with the kind of, when you're talking about 3D scanning and all this sort of deeper data points, is this to kind of, would it be to create like an immersive experience? Is that the idea?
Oh yeah. I mean, I believe in 3 years from now, there'll be 100 people lined up on the start line of King of the Hammers, and there'll be 1 million people at home playing against those 100 athletes in real time. With
like a VR rig on.
VR or a simulator, whatever they choose to, they can be on a laptop with just keyboards. The pro guys are going to be there with full driving simulators. The bottom line is the 100 racers, Jason Shearer, Lauren Healy, Shannon Campbell, they're using their car to create data. A person in a simulator is using their steering wheel and gas pedal to create data. Make those two pieces of data look the same, and you can compare them and give them back. Well, you can give them back to one. You don't give them back to the drivers in real life. They don't care.
That's wild. So they would actually be racing in a sim rig, in real life, in real time against Shannon Campbell in his actual race truck.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
It's not that much even of a stretch. It's just all you're doing is taking the data from what happened and telling a simulator this happened and a little bit later this happened, and knowing that's similar. And
just so the people listening at home understand, this isn't some like theoretical conversation. This is something you're already doing. You're working on this and capturing this data now, right? Like you're already, yeah. That's so cool. And you've already, I mean, I know you've had a sim rig guy out at the race the last couple of years too, right? Like that's the best part about doing what I do is I get to work with really cool people. Yeah. There's some people that have built some really cool stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah. So now we're now, and then back to the business side of it. It's one thing to do technology, but the business side of it, how do you validate that what we captured is what's real and what we gave back to you is what's real? If that's what we're saying, right? It's got to be real. So back to the agreement of how we're going to work together. We're partnering with the Automotive Research Center in Indianapolis to validate both the data we're capturing and our replication of that data to make sure it's, from a third party perspective, that is 10 Gs. And that's 10 Gs back in a full motion simulator. That's what 10 Gs feels like. And that's a 1-to-1. And by doing that, the byproduct of that will be designing our cars electronically.
I also have to think as a marketer that you're also going to be growing your next batch of either competitors or at least fans. Absolutely. Right? You let somebody actually participate.
The last 3 years, we've had racers start racing King of the Hammers through competitions on BeamNG.
So they learn the course digitally, and then
they proved whatever. Like, so this past year, UConn did a contest for it, and the year before we did it with our rookie program, where we had the best people coming through Reckless Racing. It was Ty. It was Ty's last name, Tyler Graham. He got to race because he won.
And on that note, if we have a minute to talk about it, I do think it's been interesting that, you talked in the beginning of this conversation, you were saying that early KOH days, it was mostly a bunch of guys in carbureted Jeeps. And then obviously for a while there, things got very exotic, but it seems like, from at least what I've observed, that it's almost come full circle. And now there are some options in some classes where people can come into this thing, and it's approachable for a normal person. It doesn't have to be somebody with unlimited money. Can you talk about some of the classes and rigs and the fact that there are now,
Well, the existence of UTVs is what changed that. I mean, the Razor first year was in 2007. They both happened at the same time. We just both happened at the same time. And by 2010, we were racing UTVs as a class. But now the level of performance that you can get from a variety of OEMs, it's not just, Can, but it's not just them. I mean, there's now 5 or 6 different OEMs making very quality cars that are all going after the same. Back to movies you watch, you watch Ford versus Ferrari, and you think about how Le Mans was the place that was the proving ground, right? And Ford was going there as a manufacturer, and in many ways, in this way, Ford was the Ferrari and Can-Am was the Ford at King of the Hammers, because Ford was already the big dog, and Can-Am was trying to prove that their car, a completely different model that could be mass produced, to go out and beat specialty race cars. In fairness, it wasn't exactly mass produced Can-Am.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty massaged, but yes, still.
But it was certainly a Can-Am chassis, and it was certainly Can-Am engineers, and it was an amazing effort and an amazing car. And that's the pudding, right? The proof's in the pudding, and the pudding is you just did it faster than everybody else.
And you've even got guys in bombers that are out there that are competitive, and it's kind of a templated.
Randy Slauson won this year in a bomber, solid axle.
Yep.
4th time, the winningest driver in the history of the race is in a solid axle car. So
that's to me, when people ask why I think Hammers is so cool, that is usually my first response is that it's the really one of the last types of racing, that and maybe like land speed racing, where
it's completely unique.
It's every rig is different. Every driver is different. Everyone's bringing different stuff to the table, and you never really know what's going to happen.
Correct.
It's not like F1 where like cubic dollars equals victory, right? It's
also one of the last forms of racing that's purely unlimited. Purely unlimited. You can do 4,400. You can build whatever you want.
That's so cool. So Dave, as you look back on the last couple of decades, what was the biggest challenge you faced on this road? I'm sure there have been many.
I think it's always the same thing, right? It's no matter what challenge is, your challenge is enrolling people to be your supporter as opposed to be your detractor. That's the constant battle. It doesn't make a difference if you're making a race or getting elected to be president or doing whatever. All you're doing is working with people to get them in one way or another to work with you. And as soon as you can achieve that, then everything is easy, no matter what the technical hurdle is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We can achieve anything if we've got the right people doing it. So if you focus on on nothing but, I just focus on trying to get the right people to have the power to go do it. Does that make sense? And they'll figure out the brain stuff, or they'll figure out the effort stuff, or we'll figure out the passion stuff, because we'll have that in spades. But the real struggle is getting, all the different parts of all the different parts of this recipe to all work together to get to the same end goal. It's usually,
and honestly, I think that applies to building anything, any organization, any business,
anything. Yeah. I think
put
that
the right butt in the right seat.
I don't think that I think in the end of it, whatever you're doing, that is the common, if you can do that, you'll succeed, whether you're cleaning houses, mowing grasses, trimming trees, or running races.
And obviously, one of the things I also love about Hammers is you see a lot of families, you see a lot of young people. I mean, you hear a lot of graybeards grumble about, there's not a lot of young car guys, which I vehemently disagree with that. But especially in off-road racing, I think you see a lot of second gen, third gen. You see a lot of young guys out there. I'm sure you're interacting with these kids, not just at the race, but kind of around the calendar. When you interact with these guys and they say, hey, I want to do what you do, or I want to be a racer, or I want to whatever, I want to get involved in off-road motorsports, what advice do you tell them?
Ultra4next.org.
What does that tell us?
Totally set me up, man. You didn't, I don't even know if you knew that or not, but if you did, then congratulations. So, a year and a half ago, I started working with Alex Stryler and a guy named Sean Cottrell, Sean is a high school teacher, a guy named Christian, I'm forgetting Christian's last name, who was with Copper Mountain College. And between those three gentlemen, they emboldened and provided the energy, the passion, again, the same thing, to create Ultra4Next, which really does have two different purposes. One is we're getting kids from high school and getting them in our industry. We need if we're going to be the most awesome form of motorsports, or the best racing, or the best sport, period, we have to have the best people. If we want to make new technology, then we have to have the best people. And so I want the smartest people to come and do what we do. And turns out it's pretty exciting work. People like to do it. And to your exact point, they just need a path. Same way we need a path for promoters. What's the path for a guy that wants to be an engineer? There's certainly a path to be an engineer in college, but how do you get back into this industry? And so Alex and Sean and Christian have started making those bridges, and are doing it in two different directions. One is just giving the tools, like putting them in front of different opportunities, 3D printing, welding, or like getting them in touching the technology so they can fall in love with it. They can become comfortable with it. And the second part is showing them what is possible. Take them to Monster, take them to IBOC, take them to Fox Shocks, take them to King Technology, King Shocks. Show them what happens when you apply, all the different facets that you learn in college that we need you to learn between your senior year in high school to, 10, 20, 30 years from now. What are you going to evolve to be? And this is what's possible. And this is, if you do these things, you could be here. And that's probably been the most powerful, because I think about it, when we were kids, you really didn't know what was even possible out there. And this changes that. This gives I don't know, it has been of all the things that I've been involved in, that's been the coolest thing, I think, is just starting off with it.
I can tell you kind of lit up talking about it. That's pretty neat.
My favorite thing in the whole world is to just take people out in the dirt. Just to get, if you give somebody a lifetime experience, they say a dog remembers your smell, right? Well, if you give someone a lifetime experience, like you're never going to forget me taking.
No, we'll never forget it. That's right.
And luckily, you will forget some of the other things I've done. So, I mean, it's like, as long as you do the right things and you do them really, really, that's the things that stick. And I don't know. Anyways, I'm doing it again.
No, that's great. I love that. So ultra4next.org.
Yep.
Okay.
Alex Stryler is a stud in our industry. He is. He
got a good book too about sponsorship and motorsports.
He literally wrote the book, and he was retiring and was happy, but he loved education. And I talked him into it, and having his energy and his organizational skills, and then the passion coming from the teachers and the students. And then conversely, being in Kentucky, being out east where I'm at, I'm working with the college out here so we can create those credentialing programs. So that's the other half of Ultra 4 Next will be those credentialing programs that we just talked about.
That's really cool.
So anyways.
Well, so Dave, last question. It's a question I ask everybody on the show. And the reason I ask it is I was not a grade student. And so for me, in business and life, kind of in everything I've ever learned has usually come as a result of me screwing something up. So I make a mistake and I go, okay, don't make that mistake again. And then I just go on to the next mistake. So a question I ask all of our guests on the show is as you think back on your career on this arc at Hammers and Ultra 4, what is the biggest mistake you made along the way and what'd you learn from it?
I didn't listen enough. I'm finding now the more that I listen now, the better off I am. And I know I didn't do hardly any of it back then. I think it was a kind of give and take. You needed a certain mix of not giving a shit. And I didn't, it's kind of hard to have not give a shit and listening skills. Now that you can listen to people and you can hear them tell you exactly what you need to hear, you just have to listen. And I didn't think I listened as much. Trying to now. I'm not great at it, but I'm trying.
That's a great answer. I had a boss a long time ago who used to say, and I didn't understand it then, I understand it now. He said, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah.
I love being around people that make me feel dumb.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So.
Well, Dave, I appreciate this. Thank you for all your time. I know you're busy. And thanks for the candor and the honesty. I think this was a great conversation, and I know the audience is going to love it.
I appreciate what you do, man. People, I don't know if people that view you in this vein also know what you do. But from our perspective, and we made light of it for the COVID stuff, but the reality of it is we're working with professionals. It's all part of the leveling up process. So thank you very much for the support that you've given us over the years and the direction and the leadership. And I'm positive that we wouldn't be achieving the things we are right now if we weren't working together. So thank you very much.
Well, I feel the same way, and I'm grateful, and we're a good team.
Cheers, man.
All right, everybody. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode of Only the Strong Survive. Thanks to Dave Cole and King of the Hammers for coming on. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, drop a review, share it with your friends. Thanks again, Dave, and we'll see you guys next time.